Last thing we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at the role of women in the workplace. And so we're going to take a look at some of the different issues and some of the different laws that apply here. What we see in the picture here, this is probably one of the most famous Supreme Court nomination hearings up until the couple recent ones here, but this is from the 1990s. This is Anita Hill, and she worked for Clarence Thomas, who was nominated to be on the Supreme Court in 1991, and she worked under him as he was head of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and she accused him of a lot of sexual harassment in the workplace. And this was kind of the first time that sexual harassment and sexual harassment protections really got into the forefront of American politics, and the importance of protecting people in this way kind of became much more front and center to American society. All right, so the first issue to deal with when we're talking about women in the workplace is we're going to deal with comparable worth. And so this is about making sure that people are paid fairly. And unfortunately, that is not true. In the median earnings for women in this country are only about 83% of those for men. So men and women are not exactly compensated fairly for their work. And so we've got some policies in place to make sure that it happens, but we still have a long way to go to actually making sure that those policies work the way that they're supposed to. So the first of these is the Equal Pay Act. And the Equal Pay Act makes it illegal to pay different wages to men and women if they perform the same work. It is also, this is very important, and this is a part of kind of all of these laws we're going to talk about in this section. It makes it illegal to retaliate against anyone who complains about this, who like files a lawsuit or something like that. It protects them from retaliation by their employers as well. So the Equal Pay Act, this is an older one here, and just says it's just illegal to pay men and women different wages for the same work. Over on the right, this is a much more recent one. This is the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. This was the first law signed by Barack Obama in 2009. This really broadened the definition of wage discrimination. It's called the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act because she actually lost a case in the Supreme Court. She found out she'd been working for this company for like 20 years, and they sent her her records got messed up, and she ended up seeing how much her male coworkers were making, and they were making a lot more than her. But the problem for her is that the statute of limitations, meaning that means like this is the time frame in which you can like sue. The statute of limitations was expired because she'd been working at the company for like 20 years, and the pay discrimination took place when she started. So when that got before the Supreme Court, they were like, "Sorry, lady, like you should have been paid more, but you can't like file a lawsuit because the statute of limitations is up." And so this law fixes that. This law changes the statute of limitations so that the statute of limitations resets with every single paycheck. Every single time a woman is paid differently than a man, there is a new opportunity to file a wage discrimination complaint. And wage discrimination is broadened to include not just wages, but also benefits. So it could be like, insurance or all sorts of different benefits that would come with the job. But this is an important law that has helped women in the workplace to make sure that they are fairly compensated for their work in the same way that men are in the workplace as well. All right, these are some laws that we've already talked about just a little bit, but in terms of hiring, these are important. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 bans gender discrimination in employment. So that means that like you can't just hire people because you can't like refuse to hire women, or you can't choose men over women just for that reason when you're hiring. Similarly, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, this prevented women from being discriminated against in hiring because they were pregnant. So like when pregnant women are out looking for work, they cannot be discriminated against. They must be, treated just like any other job candidate. And also pregnant women, like even if you know that they're pregnant, their pregnancy can't be excluded from like health benefits or like sick leave or whatever. So women have to, if your company like pays people to take sick time, or your company gives like health insurance or whatever, like you have to give those same things to pregnant women, even if you can like the employer, I guess, can anticipate that like there will be a big health situation pretty soon. So Pregnancy Discrimination Act, very important as well. The Women's Equity in Employment Act, this changed like kind of how these cases were treated before court. So this makes employers prove if they have any sort of gender requirement in their job, they now have to prove that that is like absolutely necessary. So this puts the burden of proof on the employers instead of on the people complaining. Also important stuff dealing with military service here. We've had women be an important part of our armed forces for a long time. One court case here, U.S. versus Virginia. This was a case where the military institute, particular Virginia Military Institute, was a male only institute. And so women wanted to attend this and have the same like advantages in joining the military and being qualified for like officer roles and stuff like that. And so women sued here. And in the United States versus Virginia, this was ruled that male only policies at the Military Institute violated the Equal Protection Clause. And before that, the other ones had already opened up to women. So now women can attend any of the military academies. Up until 2015, women were not allowed in combat. So like that women were able to like serve in the military, but they would have like different roles and stuff. Like the book talks about how like they like might fly planes or helicopters and stuff like that, but they wouldn't be like serving in ground combat. But in 2015, that policy has changed. So now women serve anywhere that men serve. It's very important, and women make up about 15% of our active duty military forces here. So and the last thing here is sexual harassment. So sexual harassment, a very important issue to deal with women in the workplace. So the definition by court of sexual harassment, this is defined as unwelcome sexual advances, might be requests for sexual favors and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature when this conduct affects an individual's employment, interferes with their performance, or creates an intimidating or hostile work environment. So that's really important because that broadened the types of activities that that women would be able to file lawsuits against employers based on. Now, the old idea of sexual harassment was just what we call, and this is still a form of sexual harassment, so what's called quid pro quo sexual harassment is when a job benefit of some kind is directly tied to an employee accepting an unwelcome sexual advance of some kind. So, you could have this promotion if you would date the boss or something like that is obviously illegal, and that is a clear form of sexual harassment, and that was always easy for people to like complain about to the courts. But the broader definition includes hostile work environment sexual harassment, and this is newer, but this is like where an employee has to like always deal with comments or like unwelcome like contact or whatever as a part of their environment. So it's not as clear as quid pro quo sexual harassment, but it's still important that people are able to file complaints or file lawsuits against their employers for this type of treatment. All right, time to get down to our bigly ideas here. Now, this is a big moment for our friend President Trump. What's actually happening here, this is pretty hilarious. He's very proud of this. He is issuing a pardon for Susan B. Anthony for that crime she committed when she, on purpose, decided to break the voting law in her state so that she could be punished, so that she could show how ridiculous the law was. But President Trump took the brave move of pardoning Susan B. Anthony just a couple years ago. And what we want to make sure that we can do after all this dealing with women's rights here, we want to make sure that we know the provisions of the 19th Amendment for sure, of the Equal Rights Amendment also, and we need to make sure we can explain what happened to the Equal Rights Amendment. So that helps us explain the whole amendment process and everything. But remember, it did pass Congress, but not enough states would agree to ratify that in time. We need to make sure that we can describe the use of intermediate scrutiny, and we want to make sure that there's a couple of those Supreme Court decisions, mostly just Craig versus Boren, but we want to know like the rules that came down in the other decisions there. We don't really have to know any of these cases by name, but Craig versus Boren is the important one, and we want to make sure that we can describe the legislation that protects women in the workplace. And that's it. So we have now dealt with civil rights protections for African Americans, and now we've gone through all of our civil rights protections for women. So of course these are like our two like biggest areas of civil rights protection and stuff. These are definitely not the only ones. So we will go through very quickly, just kind of touch on all sorts of different groups that are covered under the civil rights umbrella. And then that's it for the unit. We are heading toward the end of the unit here.